You carry a quiet kind of exhaustion that does not show up on the outside. It is the exhaustion of trying to keep the peace in a home that was never at peace. It is the exhaustion of loving people who only take, who only criticize, who only make everything about themselves, and still expecting that if you just try harder, they will finally see you. You have spent years editing your words, shrinking your needs, and apologizing for existing in the way you naturally do. You have felt confused about why your care never seems enough, and why every attempt to connect ends in a new wave of tension. You have questioned your own memory, your own reactions, and your own right to feel hurt. That confusion is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you have been operating in an environment that rewards self-erasure. You were not the problem. The dynamic was built on an imbalance that demanded your emotional labor while offering very little in return. You gave what you could, and it was used to fill a space that was never meant to be filled by a child, a sibling, or a parent. The reality is straightforward, even when it feels complicated. You were placed in a role that was never yours to carry. Family systems with narcissistic patterns do not run on mutual respect. They run on emotional utility. When someone is wired to prioritize their own image, comfort, and control above all else, they do not see relationships as partnerships. They see them as arrangements. The main psychological concept at work here is emotional enmeshment combined with conditional validation. In this setup, love is not a steady presence. It is a resource that gets distributed when you comply and withdrawn when you assert yourself. You learn quickly that your value is tied to your usefulness, your silence, or your ability to absorb their discomfort without complaint. That is why you feel so drained. You have been trying to build trust with someone who keeps changing the terms of engagement. You were taught to believe that loyalty means enduring mistreatment, and that stepping back means you are selfish or ungrateful. Those are not truths. They are survival stories passed down to keep the system running. You do not need to believe those stories anymore. You only need to see them for what they are, and recognize that your instinct to protect yourself was always correct. Look at how this actually plays out in daily interactions. There is a constant, quiet demand for your attention and emotional regulation. When they are frustrated, they expect you to absorb it. When they feel insecure, they expect you to reassure them. When they make a mistake, they expect you to minimize it or take the blame. This is not about occasional family friction. This is about a pattern where your feelings are only acknowledged when they align with their needs. The psychology behind this is straightforward. People who rely on external validation to maintain their sense of self cannot tolerate being emotionally alone. They need a steady stream of reassurance, admiration, or compliance to feel stable. You become the regulator. You become the mirror that reflects back a version of reality they can tolerate. The effect on you is a slow erosion of your own emotional center. You stop trusting your own reactions because they are constantly being corrected, dismissed, or turned into a problem you must fix. You begin to apologize for things that did not happen, or for feelings that are completely normal. You start measuring your worth by how calm you can keep them, rather than by how safe you feel yourself. Over time, this creates a deep disconnect between your body and your mind. Your body knows something is wrong, but your mind has been trained to explain it away as your own failure to try harder. This dynamic rarely stays flat. It moves in cycles that keep you off balance. There are periods where you are praised, included, or told that you are the only one who understands them. Those moments feel like proof that everything can work if you just stay committed. Then, without warning, the tone shifts. A small boundary is treated as a betrayal. A neutral comment is taken as an attack. The same qualities that were once praised become reasons for criticism. You are told you are too sensitive, too rigid, too ungrateful, or too distant. The psychology here is about control through unpredictability. When affection and approval are inconsistent, your nervous system stays in a state of mild alert. You keep waiting for the good version to return. You keep adjusting your behavior, hoping that the right combination of words or actions will restore the calm. This is not love. This is intermittent reinforcement, a well-documented psychological pattern that keeps people engaged in situations that are harmful. The effect on you is a constant state of emotional preparation. You stop relaxing in your own space. You rehearse conversations before they happen. You monitor their mood like weather, planning your day around the likelihood of conflict. You lose the ability to be spontaneous because unpredictability feels dangerous. You begin to believe that stability is something you have to earn, rather than something that should exist naturally in a family. The most difficult part of this is how guilt is used to hold you in place. You are told that family loyalty requires endless patience, that you owe them your time and attention because you share history, or because they provided for you. These expectations sound noble, but in a narcissistic family structure, they function as emotional locks. They are used to override your boundaries and silence your discomfort. The psychology is simple. Obligation is a powerful motivator because it taps into your core values. If you care about loyalty, compassion, and integrity, you will naturally want to honor those values. The problem is that your values are being redirected to serve someone else's comfort instead of your well-being. You are asked to sacrifice your mental health in the name of duty, and when you hesitate, you are labeled as cold or disloyal. The effect is a heavy, persistent guilt that follows you long after the conversation ends. You second-guess your decisions. You wonder if you are overreacting. You feel responsible for their loneliness, their anger, or their unhappiness, even when you know you did not create it. You carry the weight of their emotional state as if it were your job to manage it. That is an impossible burden, and it was never yours to carry. You need to hear this clearly, because it is easy to forget when you are in the middle of it. You are not responsible for fixing someone who does not want to be fixed. You are not responsible for managing emotions that are not yours. You are not responsible for preserving a relationship that requires you to disappear. These are not harsh statements. They are factual boundaries. Recognizing them does not make you unkind. It makes you honest. Awareness begins when you stop asking why they will not change and start asking what you are willing to continue tolerating. You begin to notice the patterns instead of reacting to each individual moment. You see that the criticism is not about your actual behavior. You see that the guilt trips are not about your character. You see that the silence, the inconsistent treatment, the constant demands for reassurance are all part of a system designed to keep you engaged and compliant. When you step back emotionally, even just for a few moments, you start to see the structure clearly. You realize that you have been trying to meet a standard that keeps moving. You realize that your exhaustion is not a personal failure. It is a natural response to an unnatural demand. Clarity does not arrive as a sudden revelation. It arrives as a quiet recognition that repeats itself until it becomes undeniable. You begin to separate their reality from yours. You stop internalizing their projections. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. This is where the work actually begins. Loving someone does not require you to hand them your peace. You can care about their well-being without making yourself available for emotional harm. The shift happens when you replace compliance with clarity. You start defining what you will and will not engage with, and you communicate it calmly, without anger, without lengthy explanations, and without expecting them to agree with you. Boundaries are not punishments. They are instructions for how you intend to treat yourself. You might decide that you will not participate in conversations that turn into personal attacks. You might decide that you will not answer calls that come with demands for immediate emotional labor. You might decide that visits will be shorter, or that certain topics will not be discussed. You state these limits simply. You follow through consistently. You do not argue about them. You do not justify them repeatedly. You let your actions speak. This is where calm detachment becomes your greatest tool. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop taking responsibility for outcomes that are not yours to control. You stop waiting for their validation. You stop measuring your day by their mood. You allow them to have their feelings while protecting your own nervous system. This feels unfamiliar at first because you are used to overcompensating. But as you practice it, you notice something important. The tension does not disappear entirely, but it stops living inside your chest. You begin to reclaim your energy. You begin to make decisions based on what actually supports your life, rather than what keeps the old pattern running. Self-respect is not a loud declaration. It is a quiet, daily choice to stop abandoning yourself in order to keep someone else comfortable. Healing does not require you to rewrite the past. It requires you to stop repeating it. You do not need their apology to move forward. You do not need their understanding to protect your peace. You only need your own commitment to stop treating yourself as optional. Over time, you will notice that the guilt loses its grip. You will notice that their reactions no longer dictate your emotional state. You will notice that you can think of them without feeling heavy. That is not coldness. That is recovery. You are learning how to care from a healthy distance, how to offer support without absorbing dysfunction, how to honor your history without sacrificing your present. The goal is not to become detached from all emotion. The goal is to become attached to your own well-being first, so that whatever care you offer comes from a place of choice, not obligation. You have already survived the hardest part, which was realizing that your efforts would never be enough to change a system built on imbalance. Now you are building something different. You are building a life where your voice matters, where your boundaries are respected, where your peace is not negotiable. You do not need to explain this to anyone who is not ready to understand it. You only need to live it. The path forward is quiet, steady, and entirely yours. You are allowed to step away from what drains you. You are allowed to protect your energy. You are allowed to value yourself enough to stop participating in your own exhaustion. When you do that, you do not lose your family. You simply stop losing yourself. And from that place, you can finally breathe, move forward, and build a life that reflects your worth, not their limitations.